What if I told you that the sundering of the world, the cataclysmic event that shattered the continent of Azeroth into the world we know today, was actually the second of its kind? That there existed an ancient primordial world, not empty, but full of diverse life and with struggles all of its own. To set the scene, I will start at the beginning, a world not so unlike the Azeroth we know today. However, instead of being scarred by countless wars and tragedies, it is instead lush and untouched. The elements are bountiful and roam the world freely, often clashing in battles for supremacy. It was the lack of spirit, due to the slumbering world soul within the planet, that the elements were sent into chaos. This chaos would alter their forms over time. Some of these forms came as firehawks that roamed the skies, and later the proto-dragons born from elemental power. As impressive as these were, other life would begin to appear throughout the world, which is where the first hunters appeared, the Shahalo. These powerful and majestic creatures would hold the slumbering world soul in absolute reverence, protecting nature as much as it protected them. However, it was one fateful day that the skies over Azeroth would darken, changing the world forever. Beings of boundless hunger had come to feast, the old gods. The denizens of Azeroth would not sit idly by, would harry these invaders at every turn, but they were patient and unreasonably clever. They founded and then fortified great cities, and used this epicenter to spread their corrupting influence. Ever onward they continued to grow, now a dominant civilization that would come to be known as the Black Empire. Eventually, even the elemental lords would fall by force or temptation. None alive now are so sure which. But as vast and powerful as the Empire was, they fell victim to petty squabbles. They would often fight amongst themselves. This kept them in check. Even during this time, it would seem life would continue to flourish. Change was inevitable, as the dark blood of the old gods changed many of the insectoids into the Akia, or the Naraki. However, out in the still untamed wilds, powerful spirit creatures had been sighted. The early tribal trolls called them the Loa. Both awe-inspiring and fearsome, the trolls would revere them as gods, making their settlements close to their territory. While the Black Empire was growing, a new threat would appear to eclipse all others. From out of the great dark came godlike beings made of pure starlight, brimming with the pure order magic. They looked upon the chaos of Azeroth with disgust, but coveting the world soul within, they began an invasion. Knowing they could not directly interfere without causing immeasurable damage, they chose instead to send constructs, formidable rock and metal giants imbued with their own essence, and with the means to create endless armies in their image. Striking before their enemies could react, the assault was swift and devastating. The elemental lords, now servants to the darkness, were the first to fall. Outmaneuvered and outsmarted, even the elementals' superior numbers could not contain their success. But this was only the beginning of a long and brutal campaign of subjugation. The war for the world soul had begun, and countless many long years later, 'twas the Titans who emerged victorious. But their war had taken a heavy toll upon the world, and the scars would run deep. One in particular had created a wound that would never truly heal. when Aman'Thul, the Titan leader, had directly intervened to rip an old god from the world. But even this was the beginning of their plans. What came next was worse. While they had saved Azeroth from the corruption of the Void, they had their own form of corruption in mind. What remained of the old gods were imprisoned beneath the crust, and the Titan-forged creations began reshaping the very land itself. Land masses were torn and reshaped, until they had formed one giant supercontinent. At the heart of this land lay the wound, now sealed with the scintillating energies of an arcane well. But even this began to have consequences for the flora and fauna surrounding it. Prolonged exposure began to rapidly alter the forms and structure of nearby inhabitants, giving rise to entirely new species like the Night Elves. But the Titan Forged could not stop there. They began experimenting and altering native species to suit their will. While some cases of this are confirmed, like the goblins who were created by Mimiron, there exists a glaring question. The armies the Keepers created, from giants to dwarves, did they really create any of them? Or were they altered, made to be ordered, stripped of their will? So while this has set the scene for the events of the ancient world, it did make a few leaps. A lot of this is because the time period is really vague and honestly quite messy. The information is drip-fed through clear bias recollection, or even active misinformation, like from the Titan Forged who were ordered to erase this part of history, or colour it in a only negative light. But we are a far more discerning audience than we were only a few short expansions ago. While we have not always been pro-Titan, we were able to look far more critically at their works now. But what actual evidence is there? So, in this part, I'm going to answer, or at least attempt to answer, some of these fundamental questions we have about this ancient world. So, question 1. The Shahalo. How old is this race really? While the Yongol were thought of as the progenitor race for the Tauren, it seems much more likely that these were yet another altered Titan-forged species. The Shahalo are considered the first hunters, and their histories tell of a time before even the Black Empire. But most compelling evidence of all actually comes from the Titans themselves. The star schematics found in Ulduar clearly depict a large and imposing Tauren. Now they depict lots of other races too. There are trolls, humans, and night elves. But what is strange is this facility predates the known emergence of any of these races, unless they already existed, which leads to two options. One, the Titan Forged are merely using these species as blueprints, or, just like we see in Grizzly Hills, the Titan forging process is far more sinister. The Iron Dwarves in Northrend can be seen using a process of Titan forging themselves, altering and subjugating the Earth Elementals. They are enslaving what we know to be sentient creatures. There is a possibility that the Forge of Wills and Origination is more of a reforging than anything else, which is a very troubling thought. So to the next question. The Trolls. They have an ancient history already, and are one of the few races to keep very good records. Well, that's exactly what we found with Zul'Nazman. Before the founding of Zandalar, they have tablets that talk of a previous heart of their empire. This heart was overcome by blood magic and forced them to resettle. So even the most ancient of places seemed to have a much older origin. Time and again, while looking into this, we see anomalies that just cannot be explained. What seem like retcons are actually just glimpses into the true history of Azeroth, the exact history we will be exploring in the coming trilogy. Though, if the world was a thriving place, despite the corruption of the Void growing, were the Titans right? Did they save Azeroth? This is perspective. The old gods don't consider themselves or their actions evil, and neither do the Titans. They are both the heroes of their own stories. But given the conclusion to Dragonblight, with Azeroth itself taking a direct hand in empowering her own protectors, it may just be our time, as the true heirs to this world, to fight back. We do not tolerate the old gods, and it has become clear for a while we won't tolerate the Titans either. For me, the burning question is always, what did this primordial world look like before Titan interference? I do hope we at least get a glimpse into this, as it would provide the answers to so many questions. But what about you? What ancient culture would you expect to see if you were given that glimpse? Sorry for the slower upload lately. Had some IRL stuff to deal with, but we're getting back on track now. Hope you're all getting hyped for the war within like I am, and thank you for all the support. Hit the like and subscribe button if you liked any of this, it helps so much. Oh, and don't forget to come back anytime.